So you have this really cool and unique idea for a Roblox game, right? And you start building your map and you add in free models and stuff. And then you look for a tutorial on how to make your specific game. You want to make your game functional. And then in this spoon feeding tutorial, your code won't work and you'll get a lot of bugs, and you'll try to fix those bugs and you'll get even more bugs. So then you start to look for a different tutorial and that tutorial won't work either. And so you keep trying to find tutorials, but all of them don't work, and you keep relying on these tutorials, and it's going to be hard to implement new stuff. Well, that is called tutorial hell. What you're currently stuck in is called tutorial hell. You just keep relying on spoon-feeding tutorials. What you should be doing instead is you should learn basic scripting. You should learn how general scripting works and how the Roblox API works. Get a good grasp on the syntax and the basic patterns of Lua, because it's pretty simple. It's not that hard. So yeah, I think that's all from the intro. Let's get into the tutorial. So first, open your output right here, open your Explorer and open your properties. Let's create a script in service script service. Script, there we go. I've already made a script right here. Okay, so this is what we're going to be learning. The first is we're going to be learning the Roblox API, general Lua scripting, more Roblox API, and more Lua scripting. Then we're going to be implementing all of them. So the first thing that you need to learn is how to access objects and property manipulation. So let's say you wanted to, let's create a part. Let's anchor this part. Okay. So let's say you want to unanchor this part, or you want to unanchor this base plate for some reason, and you can do it inside of a script. But to do that, you need to access the base plate first. You need to define the exact location of the base plate. So how do you do that? There we go. So this is the structure of Roblox. Okay, we got game, the workspace, and other stuff, as you can see. Here is the workspace. Here's the other stuff such as players, lighting, material service, replicated first, replicated storage, all that stuff. They're all inside of game, okay? And inside of workspace, you have base plate and part and many more, okay? You have terrain and camera and spawn location and stuff. And inside of part, inside of base plate, you have properties, or you have other children, right? And instead of base plate and part, you got properties such as anchor, transparency, color. You need to define the exact location of your instance. This is called an instance. Base plates, parts, folders, sounds, particles, they're all instances. So you need to define an exact path. So it's game, workspace, base plate, and anchored, right? Let's add in anchored here. Anchored. Like that, right? Okay, so you need to define the exact path. It's from game and then workspace. From workspace, you need to go lower into base plate and into anchored. There we go. So this is the parent of base plate. Base plate is the child of workspace, and base plate has siblings such as part, terrain, folders, and all that stuff. Okay, so how do you define the path? In Lua, you can create paths using dots. So here's what I mean. Game.workspace.baseplate.anchored, and you can assign a value by using equals, true or false. There we go. So here in anchored, as you can see, it's true or false. And there are properties that uses numbers, vector3, strings, brick colors, color from RGB, and all that stuff. Let's test this out. There we go, it worked. Okay, so let's say you want to access the spawn location. You can apply the same method. Game, workspace, spawn location, anchored equals false. There we go. But here's the thing. Roblox created a shortcut for workspace, so you don't need to do game.workspace. You don't need to do game.workspace. You can just do workspace. As you can see, workspace. You can just do that. Workspace. There we go. But Roblox only created the shortcut for workspace and not other stuff such as replicated storage. Roblox hasn't created a shortcut for that. So for all these other stuff, you need to do game.replicate storage, .server storage, .players, and all that stuff. Now let's get into the general Lua scripting. Let's get into variables. Okay, what are variables? Variables are something to store value. Let's say my variable name will be my variable, and the value will be hello. Okay, so here you can name your variables by using underscores and all that stuff, but what you can't do is you can't add in special keys such as this, or this. You can't add in special keys, and you can't name your variable a keyword. You can't do while equals hello. No, you can't do that. You can't add spaces to your variables. Okay, so there we go. Variable. So variables are normally global, but the best practice is to use local to make it a local variable. I'll explain this later in scopes. And you can actually print your variable into the output by doing print my var. So this will print out hello. As you can see, it printed out hello. And you might be wondering why I use this quotes. So this is what it's called a string. A string is used for text such as hi or apple, and this is a type. So there are 4 types in Roblox, in Lua as well: nil, strings, booleans, true, false, and numbers 1, 2, 3. So only 4. Nil means nothing. Nil is nothing. Strings are texts, true and false, and these are just numbers. Okay, you can't set numbers with strings. You can only set numbers with numbers. So if you want to, let's say, set a size, you can't set the numbers with strings. You can only set them with real numbers like this. I'll get into that later. I'll get into vector 3s and stuff later. Okay, you might be wondering what this is. This is what's called a comment. So a comment is something that you can use to comment your script, and the script will completely ignore this part of the code. So if you remove this, Roblox will not ignore this and it will have an error, as you can see. There we go. Let's set my var to 120 or something like that. Now let's get into tables and dictionaries. Okay, let's say you want to store more than one value and you want to store the values under one umbrella, under one name. So let's create the table. You can do that with tables. My table. And to create a table, you need to do curly brackets, and then you can put in your values. I want to add in a number, 120, or just 100. I want to add in a boolean, true. I want to add in a string, hello. I want to add in nil. Nil is nothing, so when you print this, it will not print out the 4th section, the 4th value. And you can separate those values using commas. So 100, comma, true, comma, hello, and all that stuff. And you can also print more than one value by using comma, my table. There we go. 20 and this. Alright, here's the thing. You can also change values. Okay, let me change my var to hello or to what's up. I can just do that. I assign the value to what's up by using one equal sign, and I don't need to add in local. This is only for declaring value. When you added value, you can just do my var equals your value. Let's get into functions. Okay, this is very interesting. So in Lua, in scripting, you can store data. As you can see, you can store data. You can store multiple data under one umbrella, under one name. But you can also store code. You can store code by using function. The name of the function, you need to put in the name of the function, my function, and you need to add in parentheses, and to close the function off, you need to add in end. As you can see, this signs the end of the function, and you can store code inside of this function. The code inside of this function can be run when you call the function. This is how you call the function. You put in the function name and you add in the parentheses. If you don't add in the parentheses, the function will not run. And if you don't call the function will not run. It will just store code. So my function. You can store data, you can store multiple data, and you can store code, which is pretty cool. Now, this is mostly used if there's a long amount of code and you need to copy and paste that code over and over again, but it'll be bad practice if you just keep copy and pasting code. So the best practice is to use a function that does the same thing and it only takes one line. Okay, so in this function, let's do multiple stuff. Let's base split. Let's set this anchor to false. Let's set this to false, and yeah, and we'll call my function, and let's do a print in my function. Print, this function has been ran. Okay, so let's see what that does. As you can see, this function has been ran and everything fell. You can store code inside of functions, which is cool. You can also create variables inside of functions and all that stuff. Local variable. You can also edit variables inside of functions. And there's one more features to functions. Let me tell you about it. It's called parameters. Okay, let's create a parameter inside of this function. So the parameter is, so you put in the parameter inside of the parentheses. So what a parameter does is it basically stores temporary value for that function. So this data only exists in this function and you can't access it anywhere else. But this function will have access to this value. So my parameter is nil, right? Let's print my parameter. Let's add a comma to print multiple values. My parameter. There we go. It'll print out nil because there's nothing in the parameter. So how do you insert a parameter? So to insert a parameter, you need to put in inside of the parentheses. Let's put this is a cool parameter. It'll print out this is a cool parameter. So this is used if you want the same functionality but different properties or different modifications. You can use parameters for that, which is cool. And let's say you have multiple parameters, right? Parameter 2. You need to sort the parameter accordingly. So if you want the first parameter to print, so if you want to print this is a cool parameter, you need to put this in the first parameter. Let's put in a second parameter, and it'll print out nothing because we didn't do anything with the second parameter, right? Now you need to actually sort the parameter. If you put them in the wrong place, then it will not give you the result that you want. So here, let me switch the place. Second parameter, this is a cool parameter. It'll print out second parameter. So the position of the parameter matters. Okay, my parameter, second parameter. Okay, so that's what functions are. It's pretty simple. And now let's get into scopes. So what are scopes? It ties back to variables. In variables, there's local and global variables. Okay, here let's say I create a variable, local function variable equals I am a variable inside of a function, and you print it outside of a function variable. There will be an error because this variable does not exist. The thing about local variables is that it's local to that section of the script. Okay, so here it's local to everything because it's not inside of any function. Any function and any events can access this variable. But if you create a variable inside of a function, only this function has access to this variable. Let's print function variable. As you can see, it works because we have access to this variable because it's inside of this section of the script. It's inside of this function. It's inside of this code. Now, there's this thing called global variables. You can just remove the local and you can actually print the function variable outside of this function. As you can see, there's an error, but there's no error actually, because Roblox doesn't recommend using global variables. As you can see, it printed out I am a variable inside of a function. This is what it's called, a global variable. But this is bad practice because it can get confusing. So what I recommend you doing is to create a variable here, function variable, and set this value to nil so that it has no value, and you edit the value. You assign a different value inside of this function. This value will change when this function has been run. So okay, let's do a print. Let's print multiple values. Let's print before function has been called. Let's print after function has been called. There we go. Let's see if this works. Before the function has been called, it's nil. After the function has been called, it's I am a variable instead of a function. Okay, that's what scopes are: global variables, local variables. So yeah, that's what I recommend you doing. You create a variable, you declare a variable with no value, and you change it inside of a function if you need to do that. So yeah, that's what I recommend you doing. If you want to add in a variable that changes when a function has been called, you create that variable and you set the value to nothing, to nil, and you change that value inside of a function. Alright, now let's get into more Roblox API. So, okay, let me remove the prints because it's getting messy, right? Let me remove this. Let me remove this. Let me remove this. Remove this. Because it's really messy. Now I want to change the base plate color, right? Okay, let's change the color. I can change the color and I can change the brick color. Let's go to color first. Actually no, let's do brick color first. Okay, so how do you change a brick color? Okay, brick color. What is this? This is string. Can you do hot pink? No, you can't do that because for brick colors you need to use a built-in table. Use brick color.new and you put in the brick color really red, and there we go. Okay, so what is this? What's brick color.new? So .new is clearly a function, right? There's parentheses and there's a parameter really red. So what is brick color? Brick color is actually a built-in table, and print is actually a built-in function. Print Lua automatically creates the function for you, print. So you just need to call it and put in the parameter. So this is a built-in function. This is a built-in function inside of the brick color. As you can see, there's a dot, which means new is a function instead of brick color. So it'll look something like this. Built-in table. Let's imagine this is brick color, and let's imagine there's no function. New, something like this, and the function. Function. There we go. So you do built-in table.new. Same, right? You might be wondering, what's this? What's new? Well, for tables, you can actually print the specific value of the table. You don't have to print the entire table. Let's say I want to print the first value of the table. I can do 1. This is what's called an index. An index is the position of the value. First position, second position, third position, fourth position. The first position is 100, the second position is 2, and so on. As you can see, 100. You can actually create custom index. So this uses the default index 1, 2, 3, 4. You don't need to put in anything, but you can create a custom index. So in other programming languages, this is called a dictionary. Okay, so this is the custom index, and this is equal to the value, my value. It's going to be a string, and the custom index requires a string. So let's do custom index. Now we can do something like this: print dictionary dot custom index. Or you can do the same indexing method by doing the square brackets custom index, as you can see. So when you think about it, it's similar to how you access base plate and part from the workspace, right? Well, that's because everything is pretty much a table, really. So you can do the same thing with the square bracket with workspace. You can do print workspace and terrain, and it'll work. So everything is pretty much a table or a dictionary, anything you want to call it. As you can see, there's terrain, so everything's tables. Okay, Lua loves tables. Okay, tables is your best friend. You can do anything with tables. Now there are instances, events, and instances methods. What are instances, events, and methods? Okay, let me go to events first. So in every instance, what I mean by instance is base plate, camera, terrain, spawn location. These are instances. Every instance has an event and a method. Let me go over the events first. Let's create a comment, events. So you can actually view object browser. Hold on. Object browser. Here in part, is there part? There we go, there's part. So these are the events of part, okay? There's, as you can see, this lightning symbol, these are events. This blue symbol, this blue icon is properties, and this purple icon is method, it's methods, okay? So here are the events of the part. There's touched, it fires every time the part has been touched. There's touch ended, it fires every time the touch has been ended. There's child added, it fires every time there's a child inside of the base plate, inside of the part. So let's try doing child ended. Okay, let's do child ended event. Now let's combine variables with the Roblox API, Roblox objects. So let's create a new variable, local baseplate, workspace.baseplate. Now you can store an instance as well. Now you don't have to keep doing workspace.baseplate. Now there's a shortcut, baseplate. There we go. Now we're going to be adding an event in baseplate. So here's the event dot child added. And in events, you can connect to a function, connect, and there we go, that's an event. Every time this event has been fired, it will connect to a function. So here is this is actually a method, but I'll explain it later. So what you need to do is you need to put in a function inside of this parentheses. So this is a parameter. You put in a function right here, and let's print child has been added. There we go. So this function will run every time a child has been added to the workspace. So let's add in a part. Let's add in a decal. Child has been added. Let's add in a part. Child has been added. As you can see, that is an event. Now there's also something called methods. So what are methods? As you can see, I've explained this before. It's the purple stuff. So methods are functions that are attached to something, okay? So it's an attached function. Baseplate has this method called destroy. So as you can see, this is a function. There's this parentheses, but it's connected to the baseplate, okay? And there's no parameters inside of this method. This is also a method. It uses a colon. Methods use colon, so the object, here's what methods are: the object, the colon, and the method. There we go. So baseplate, destroy, this is a method. Baseplate, wait for child, this is a method. Baseplate, clone, this is a method. So it's this colon and a function right next to it. There we go. So let's destroy this baseplate every time a child has been added. Baseplate, destroy. There we go. Let's add in a part. Let's add in decal. And there we go. The baseplate has been destroyed. Very nice. I've explained to you what events are and methods are. Now let's get into the more complicated stuff in Lua scripting: if conditions and loops. Let's say you have a variable and you want to check if that variable is equal to something, or if you want to check if something exists, or if this or if that. You need to use if conditions, okay? So we want to check if the myvar value is 120. Let's do let's create an if statement. So this is how you create an if statement. You write if the condition is myvar equals 120. Then this code will run. So every time, so if the value is 120, this code will run. So you need to close this if statement using AND, something similar to events and functions. And let's print myvar is clearly 120. But what if myvar isn't 120? I want to check if myvar isn't 120. If myvar is anything but 120, let's print myvar is not 120. Let's do a code after this. Print. This is a print statement. If I run this code, it will print out myvar is clearly is not 120. What? Oh yeah, myvar is what? Oh yeah, myvar is what's up. Okay, so it'll print myvar is not 120. And what is this equal sign? Okay, why not just use equal? So one equal sign is to assign a value, is to set a value, and two equal sign is to check if this value is equals to this. You can check if they're not equal to, myvar is not equal to 120 by doing a squiggly line. You can check if myvar is bigger than 120. You can check if myvar is smaller than 120. You can check if myvar is bigger or is smaller or equal to 120. You can check if myvar is bigger or equal to 120. You can also check if myvar equals 120 and my table 1 equals 100. You can do that. You can also do OR. You can also do OR, and you can also do NOT and all that stuff. So OR, if this condition is true, or this condition is true, it will run this code. It's pretty simple. It's pretty self-explanatory. So here is an if statement. Here's the condition. if my var equals 120 or my table 1 equals 100. Let's run to see the result. Here it worked. Okay, so here's the condition, which is this. This is the condition. If this condition is true, it will run the code instead of if. This is the code I'm talking about. Else, if this code is false, it will run the code instead of else. And it will continue the rest of the code. There we go. It's pretty simple. But let's say if you want to check for two conditions, okay, you can do else if. So the problem with else is if the condition is not true, then it will just run this code. But I want to check for another specific condition. You can do that by doing else if my var equals what's up, then. So it's similar to if. It's basically if 1, if 2, if 3. So you can add in more conditions to the if statement. Print my var is clearly what's up. There we go. So let me provide another flowchart. If else if statement. So here's the condition 1. If my var equals 120. Okay, it's not true. So let's go to condition 2. My var equals what's up. Yeah, it's true. So it will run the code inside of else if. But if it's not true, it will run inside of else. There we go. It's very simple. And yeah, there it is. My var is not 120. Actually, what? What's up? Oh, I made a typo. There we go. As you can see, it worked. Alright, next up we got loops. What are loops? Loops are just repetitions. So there are 3 types of loops: a for loop, a pairs loop, and a while loop. So let's get into the for loops first. So for loops are just loops that repeat a finite amount of times. So to create a for loop, you just use for and I equals the start of the loop. I'll do 1, and the end of the loop I'll do 10, 2. So I means iterations. The start of the iteration is 1 and the end of the iteration is 10. So it'll run this code 10 times. Let's print I, and it'll print 1 to 10. It printed 10 times. And there's also a step parameter. I'll do 0.1. So a step is essentially just a step. I'll show you what it does. As you can see, because my step is 0.1, it does 1, 1.1, 1.2. So it'll keep adding 0.1 until the end of the iteration, which is 10. Pretty simple stuff. You can also do something like this. The start of the iteration 10, the end of the iteration 0, and the step is -1, and it'll count backwards. So this is pretty good for counters and stuff. And yeah, pair loops just loops through tables. Okay, I could add in a new value, hello, and hot dog or something, and let's loop through this table for iteration or index value in pairs, and then you put in the table dictionary, spring dictionary, and do. So for the index is this, the value, which is this, in pairs dictionary. So it'll loop through the table, it'll iterate through the table, it'll go through this. Let's print this out. Print I and V. Let's see how this behaves. As you can see, the index 1, hello, 2, hot dog, custom index my value. Now if you use I pairs, it will be sorted, but it will ignore custom index because they are not numerical. As you can see, this is ordered, this is sorted, but there is no custom index. There we go. And then there's while loops. While loops are just conditional loops. So let's create a while loop. While, let's do while workspace find first child base plate do print base plate still exists and print and wait 0.1 second, because if you don't add a wait, this loop will just keep looping infinitely and your game will crash. So yeah, so find first child is a method. As you can see, it's a built-in method. It's an instance method. It finds, it checks if a part exists. If it doesn't, it'll just return false. But you can do something like this, workspace.baseplate. But because this doesn't use find first child, if this gets deleted, then there will be an error. So find first child prevents errors. So yeah, find first child is used to find something, and if it doesn't exist, it won't error. So here, base plate still exists. Let's destroy the base plate. There we go, it'll stop printing. So this is a conditional loop. If this condition is true, it'll keep looping. If this condition is false, it'll stop looping. It'll pause the script for 0.1 seconds. This is the parameter. I can do 10 seconds and it'll pause the script for 10 seconds. And now let's implement all of them, but maybe not all of them, maybe only implement some of them. Okay, let's create a variable folder, and I want to create a folder like this. But how do you create a folder in a script? So to create a folder, there is a built-in table and a built-in function called, the built-in table is called instance, and the built-in function is .new. And there's a parameter. The parameter, I'm going to be creating a folder, and there's a property in the folder which is called the parent. As you can see, I want to set the parent to the workspace, because if it's not parented to the workspace, it'll be parented to nil, which means it doesn't exist. Okay, now let's create a part. Instance.new, put in part size, position, vector 3. This is a built-in table, so vector 3 represents 3D space XYZ 0, 20, 0, and let's parent this to the folder. And let's do part.touch. This is an event, this is a method, and this event returns a parameter. It returns a value which is hit, the part that it hits. We're going to print the hit, and we're going to destroy the hit. There we go. Actually, now I'm just going to be changing the color of the hit. The color equals color3.fromRGB. This is a built-in table, this is a built-in function, so this returns an RGB. This has red, green, blue as the parameter. Let's do math.random 1255. There we go. And there we go. Alright, so this is it for this video. I hope you learned something from this video. I've learned the basics, how you can create something simple. And I will be seeing you in the next video. Goodbye.